There is a deadly drug readily available on Britain's streets. It's responsible for half of all hospital admissions and kills over 25,000 people a year. It's connected with child abuse and broken marriages. Over 1 million people in Britain are dependent on it. It's implicated in 3/4 of all violent crimes, half the murders and 1/3 of suicides. And yet if you're over 18, you can buy it perfectly legally. Each year, over £200 million is spent advertising it. The drug is alcohol.
In this unit here, we perform tests on all sorts of new drugs. They're administered to human volunteers for the first time after they've been tested in animals. There is absolutely no doubt that alcohol would not pass these tests in volunteers. It has harmful effects both on the liver and on the tummy, for example, which would mean it would not be passed to be given out to the general public.
People who drink notice the first effects of alcohol on their brain. Their behaviour changes because alcohol affects this part of the brain, causing them to feel often cheerful. It's a surprise to many people to know that alcohol is a sedative because of the way they feel. But this sedation actually stops you behaving in a way that you normally would.
Alcohol's a disinhibitor. It removes your inhibitions. So you do all sorts of things in public that you wouldn't dream of doing if you were stone cold sober. So people start moving closer than they would normally expect to be to the person next to them. Conversation gets louder than it would be if you weren't drinking. Movements get sloppier and less controlled, and behaviour generally gets wilder and sillier and noisier.
It's the best place to be.
According to a British commercial, this squirrel drinks a well-known brand of lager. The message is that if you drink it, you can do amazing things.
This is something you won't see very often. It's a police officer giving another police officer a glass of sherry before she drives. Leslie is a highly trained police driver within the Metropolitan Police, and she has just successfully completed a very demanding manoeuvring exercise.
I'm now going to have this double measure of sherry. It shouldn't take me over the legal limit, but in about 15 minutes' time, I'm going to do the same test again and see if it affects my judgment.
Any amount of alcohol in your system affects your ability to make sound judgment, because alcohol is a drug, and any drug affects your power of reasoning, your ability to react, and so on. So any amount of drink, will affect your ability to drive correctly. You have to wrap your lips round the tube, okay? It's no good blowing it like you're going to blow a musical instrument, okay? It's like blowing up a balloon, okay? Deep breath. Blow. Harder, harder, harder. Go on. Go on, that's fine.
Adverts tell you that if you drink, you can be sexy,
Every time you see me,
sophisticated,
in my sin. So what's the use
laid back,
sober?
or even clever. But they don't tell you that the complete opposite can be true. Alcohol is often linked to aggression. 75% of all assault cases involve alcohol.
Aggression is not an easy thing to measure, but people have associated alcohol with aggressive behaviour. We've tried to set out to measure scientifically if there's any truth in this association.
In this test, two people in separate rooms punish each other with a loud noise.
We get two people to compete against each other on a simple reaction time test, where the winner can punish the loser. When the warning light comes on, then a red light comes on, then you respond as quickly as you can by pressing the red button. If you win the task, then you can set a level of noise for your opponent and you administer it. If you lose, then you see the level of noise which your opponent has set for you on these lights here. Normally, when people carry out this task, they concentrate on winning, and the punishment is not very important to them. They set very low levels. We then stop and give them a drink, and then the emphasis changes.
Come on.
Normally, people have strong rules to prevent them from behaving aggressively because of the consequences of their actions. But when they drink alcohol, their brain is no longer working effectively and they don't care about the consequences.
Adverts play on people's expectations of alcohol. They expect it to make them feel good, and that suits the drink industry. But some countries are taking action against alcohol advertising. In France, for example, strict laws control the message in alcohol adverts. Lifestyle ads are banned. They are only allowed to show the product. In some American states, there is a strong movement to put warnings after TV commercials.
Surgeon General's warning, drinking during pregnancy may cause mental retardation and other birth defects. Avoid alcohol during pregnancy.
Drinking alcohol may become addictive.
The British drink industry refused us permission to show you any TV alcohol advertisement. Can it be that they're afraid that any similar restrictions might happen here?
I don't think there's any case to ban alcohol advertising. It's a perfectly lawful product enjoyed by very many people. There is no evidence from anywhere in the world that cutting and reducing the amount of alcohol advertising will have any effect on the total consumption of alcohol products and the related problem of alcohol abuse.
In an ideal world, I would like to see a ban on all forms of alcohol advertising. But we don't live in an ideal world, and it would be politically impossible to have a ban in the United Kingdom. Therefore, what I would like to see is that we control the volume of advertising, that advertising is monitored not by the drink industry or the Advertising Association, but by an independent group.
Unlike tobacco, where you couldn't define a safe level for smoking, you can set down sensible drinking limits. And therefore, if you banned a product which was actually used sensibly and responsibly and safely by the majority of users, this would raise very dangerous precedents for control of advertising in the future.
We're not suggesting that there should be a total ban on advertising, but we would like to see a much greater balance in the messages that come across. We'd like to see an advertising levy to pay for some of those messages getting onto our TV and cinema screens. We'd like to see better information on bottles and cans telling about the number of units of alcohol that are in them. And we'd like to see higher taxation of alcohol. At the end of the day, we want people to think twice before they drink.
I personally don't believe that alcohol advertising should be banned. I think that drugs in societies do play a role, and almost all societies have a drug, either alcohol, perhaps cocaine, within their society. And it may be that these drugs are very important to enable people in very stressful societies to behave in a very uninhibited way for a little while, and that is an important aspect of keeping people within these complicated societies from going mad.
It's not only our brain that is affected by alcohol, it has an effect on our whole body. When we take a drink, swallowing causes a flap in our throat called the epiglottis to close, allowing the liquid to go into our stomach instead of our lungs.
If one is sick, particularly with alcohol in the vomit, some of it gets into the lungs and can cause a lot of damage. So this mechanism is important. It's important to remember, too, it can be suppressed by alcohol. After swallowing, the fluid runs down over the back of our tongue and gets into the esophagus, the gullet, down it goes, through the diaphragm about here, and then into the stomach. And the stomach is where the process of absorption and digestion begins. Now this stomach is empty. Whether your stomach is full or empty makes a big difference to how quickly you absorb drinks. And in particular, if the drinks are fizzy, because they tend then to be acid, they tend to pass through the stomach very much more quickly and be absorbed very readily. After the stomach, we go through the duodenum, and absorption then takes place in this tightly coiled intestine, the guts.
Drink is absorbed by tiny finger-shaped villi inside the gut.
You begin to absorb alcohol within a few minutes of drinking it, and most of it is absorbed within about 45 minutes or so, assuming you've drunk on an empty stomach. The alcohol, which has been absorbed through the gut, goes via a large vein to the liver, entering the gland about here. It then circulates in the liver, and the liver cells break down the alcohol, the blood returning to the circulation through these large veins. The liver can only break down a certain amount of alcohol on each time that the blood passes through. And this rate is quite slow. You can still be drunk the morning after a party. This is a slice of a normal liver. It has an even brown surface, a regular pattern of blood vessels, and a uniform structure. This slice of liver is from a patient with cirrhosis. Cirrhosis is a condition that can affect those who drink alcohol to excess, and you can see the difference clearly on the surface of the gland. Instead of an even pattern, you have lots of little, we call them nodules, they're areas where the liver cells are growing in an attempt to make up for the damage done to them on previous occasions when alcohol's been taken. These changes stop the liver working properly. The cells are growing instead of breaking down the various poisons presented to them, and the blood supply in the liver is interfered with, meaning that the whole gland can't work very well. This change occurs after years of alcohol abuse and can lead to death. The blood leaves the liver, still containing alcohol, and comes to the heart. Now this is a preserved specimen of heart, which enables me to show you what a strong muscular pump it is. This pump pumps the blood on into the lungs and to the rest of the circulation. Those who drink alcohol for a long period of time, in some instances, can damage the working of this pump as well. This is a pair of lungs. They're rather collapsed in this situation, but you can see that they're sponge-like. This black coloration is due to smoking. When the blood leaves the heart, it runs through these arteries to the outer part of the lung, where oxygenation takes place as you breathe. Once that's over, it returns through these veins to the heart to be pumped around the circulation. Gas exchange takes place through these airways. When you breathe in, oxygen comes in. When you breathe out, used gases and some alcohol comes out with what you exhale.
Good evening, sir. I stopped you for the manner of your driving. Can I smell intoxicating liquor on your breath, sir? I'd like to ask you to take a breath test. Can you step out of the vehicle, please?
When we smell alcohol, cells at the top of our nose are stimulated. These send electrical impulses to our brain. When you blow into a breathalyzer, it acts in a similar way. Inside are some complex electronics, but at its heart is a small white disc, a fuel cell, which converts the chemical energy stored in alcohol into electricity. If you take the disc apart, you find two electrodes with acid between them. In this experiment, the electrodes are wired to a voltmeter, which will show any voltage produced by the cell. A plastic tube allows alcohol vapour to pass over the right electrode. Another tube allows air to pass over the left electrode. This cell allows alcohol to react with air to produce electricity. The more alcohol in your breath, the bigger the voltage. A big voltage triggers the red light.
We've got 3 sets of lights here, green, amber and red. If it goes to red, it means you failed the test and you'll be arrested and taken to the local police station. If it goes to amber, it means you've got traces of intoxicating liquor in your breath specimen you've just given to me. So as you can see, it's a green. It's a negative test. Thank you, sir. Good night.
There you go, my darling.
That's that again, thanks. The various alcoholic beverages contain different amounts of alcohol. So if you want to work out what you're drinking in a given week, you can use the unit system. 1 unit of alcohol is contained in half a pint of ordinary beer, or in 1 glass of wine, or in 1 glass of fortified wine, such as martini or sherry, or in a single pub measure of spirits, such as gin or vodka. If you're a man, it's recommended that you take no more than 21 units of alcohol in any given week. That could be, for example, 6 pints of beer, each containing 2 units, and 6 glasses of wine, each containing 1 unit, and 3 drinks of whiskey, again each containing 1 unit. 21 units in all. In the body, the alcohol is distributed in the water. Because women's bodies have less water than men, the alcohol becomes more concentrated.
Women's bodies contain about 25% less water than men's bodies. If equal amounts of dye, which represents alcohol, are added to each glass, the solution in the right-hand glass is a deeper green because it is more concentrated.
So the recommended levels for women are lower. In fact, 14 units per week, which might be made up of 2 pints of beer and 6 glasses of wine and 4 measures of gin. It's the best place to be.
According to a British commercial, this squirrel drinks a well-known brand of lager. The message is that if you drink it, you can do amazing things.
This is something you won't see very often. It's a police officer giving another police officer a glass of sherry before she drives. Leslie is a highly trained police driver within...
In this unit here, we perform tests on all sorts of new drugs. They're administered to human volunteers for the first time after they've been tested in animals. There is absolutely no doubt that alcohol would not pass these tests in volunteers. It has harmful effects both on the liver and on the tummy, for example, which would mean it would not be passed to be given out to the general public.
People who drink notice the first effects of alcohol on their brain. Their behavior changes because alcohol affects this part of the brain, causing them to feel often cheerful. It's a surprise to many people to know that alcohol is a sedative because of the way they feel. But this sedation actually stops you behaving in a way that you normally would.
Alcohol's a disinhibitor. It removes your inhibitions, so you do all sorts of things in public that you wouldn't dream of doing if you were stone cold sober. So people start moving closer than they would normally expect to be to the person next to them. Conversation gets louder than it would be if you weren't drinking. Movements get sloppier and less controlled. And behaviour generally gets wilder and sillier and noisier.
There is a deadly drug readily available on Britain's streets. It's responsible for half of all hospital admissions and kills over 25,000 people a year. It's connected with child abuse and broken marriages. Over 1 million people in Britain are dependent on it. It's implicated in 3/4 of all violent crimes, half the murders and 1/3 of suicides. And yet if you're over 18, you can buy it perfectly legally. Each year, over £200 million is spent advertising it. The drug is alcohol.